Sooner or later in everyone's life, there comes a time of choice, and the most difficult choice concerns love. Sometimes it's hard to know if the person you're with is really the one you've been looking for and waiting for all your life. That's the choice that fell to the hero of this story, a young man named Kevin. But first things first. It was a warm spring evening. Kevin was sitting by the window in a cozy cafe, drinking coffee. From time to time, he glanced at his watch. Then Kevin took his phone out of his pocket and called a friend. He had been waiting for an hour. The friend had some important business to attend to and said that he wouldn't be able to come. Kevin hung up irritably and thought about it. Today was his birthday. He didn't want to celebrate or arrange a party, so he just suggested to his best friend to sit in a cafe. Every birthday always gave him some kind of inexplicable melancholy, and the guy became gloomy and pensive. He recently returned to his hometown after 5 years living abroad. There he studied at one of the most prestigious universities on the planet. Kevin graduated with honors and now returned home with a sense of accomplishment. Kevin called to the waitress and asked her to bring him more coffee and strawberry shortcake. Looking after the girls leaving, Kevin took out his work pad and tried to concentrate on his work. He was the director of a construction company whose founder was his grandfather. After a quick glance at the notes in the notebook, he underlined what needed to be done first and put the notebook away in his briefcase. The waitress brought the order, but Kevin did not feel like eating, so he thanked her and asked for the bill. The check was for $20. Kevin put down the $100 bill and headed for the exit. As he was about to leave, he heard a call and turned around. He saw a waitress hurrying toward him. She came up to him panting and said that he had forgotten his change. The guy looked at the banknotes outstretched and shook his head. He replied that it was for a tip and that he didn't need change. Catching the girl's surprised look, the young man explained that today was his birthday and that the best way to celebrate it was to do something nice for someone. The girl smiled and congratulated him. And then she added, blushing at the same time, that her name was Nicole, and she would be very happy if he stopped by again. Lying in bed at home, Kevin thought long and hard about meeting Nicole. She was very different from all the other girls he knew, and it was her peculiarity that appealed to him. Kevin, despite his wealth, was a lonely man. He was not very lucky in relations with the women. He met either stupid or mercenary women. The meeting with Nicole gave him an entirely different feeling. She reeked of a kind of home comfort and warmth. With these thoughts, Kevin went to sleep. In the morning he went to work as usual. When he arrived at the office, he met his secretary Kimberly. She was a beautiful young blonde model-looking girl. He had known her since high school. She was the daughter of friends of his parents. Now she had been given an internship with him as a secretary. But Kevin understood that his parents would be happy if they got married. He was a gentleman and was used to listening to his parents. Kevin had been noticing the meaningful looks she gave him for a long time, but he was in no hurry to reciprocate them. When she asked him how his birthday had been, and offered to spend the weekend together, Kevin agreed by inertia. Then, turning on his work computer, the man went to work and distracted himself from thinking about women. The weekend came. Kevin, as promised, went on a date with Kimberly. They went to a restaurant, visited the theater, and took a walk in the spring city. Kimberly chattered and laughed incessantly, trying her best to let Kevin know how she felt about him. And in the evening, when it was time to say goodbye, Kimberly hugged Kevin herself and tried to kiss him, but he pulled away and said he was just very tired from the day. He drove Kimberly home and went to the cafe where Nicole worked. The girl recognized him and immediately approached him. Kevin noticed the kindness and joy in her eyes as she took his order. And then Kevin asked what her plans were for Sunday. It was her day off and she was completely free. The guy invited her to go for a walk with him, and after she agreed, he took her phone number. The next day, he called the girl in the morning and they agreed to meet near the entrance of the amusement park in the evening. He spent the whole day getting ready for the meeting like a schoolboy and couldn't wait until the evening. In the evening, they rode the roller coaster, ate ice cream, and then went to the little cafe. Kevin asked Nicole about her life, and she told him that she lived alone with her little sister in a small apartment on the outskirts of town. Her mother died 3 years ago of cancer, and her father died years ago. Her sister's daddy Nicole doesn't even know. Her mother never told him anything, it was just a one-time fling. And now for 3 years, Nicole alone raises his sister Beatrice, who was only 7 years old. Kevin, listening to her story, nodded sympathetically. That's how their first evening together went. Since then, his heart has been divided into 2 halves. One half wanted to be with Kimberly, like his parents wanted him to be, and the other half with Nicole. One day, the boy called Nicole, but she said through tears that her sister was sick, coughing a lot, and had a high fever. Kevin took them to the doctor without delay and afterwards bought all the necessary medicine. In the evening, while Nicole was cooking dinner, Kevin sat by Beatrice's bedside and noticed the strong resemblance of the girl to her sister. Kevin ran his hand across the girl's hot forehead and whispered that everything would be all right. After this incident, Kevin's bond with Nicole became stronger. He often visited her and her sister, bringing them groceries. Nicole looked up to him as a savior. At the same time at work, he had to communicate with Kimberly. Then one day, the girl decided to go all in and asked when they were going to get married. Kevin choked on his tea, and the girl went on to say that it was his grandfather himself who had offered wedding the first one. Kevin looked at her with a look of bewilderment, and Kimberly nodded affirmatively and walked out of his office. Kevin decided that very day to talk to his grandfather. He entered his office, sank into a black leather chair, and at once said that he resented his grandfather's desire to marry him without his permission. Grandfather stared at him in surprise, and then, when his grandson told him about his conversation with Kimberly, he laughed softly. Kevin, ignoring this, said that he had made up his mind. He loved another girl, a simple waitress, and was going to marry her. Grandpa scratched the back of his head thoughtfully. Yes, the situation was not pretty, as he had already had time to call Kevin's parents and tell them that his son was marrying Kimberly. There was silence in the office, and then Grandpa came up with a plan. Let me fire you for fun. Tell everybody you don't work here anymore, and I disinherited you. You stay home without a job, and then we'll see if Kimberly needs you without money and a job. If she doesn't leave, it means she really loves you. So we'll see how she feels, and you'll see who you really care about. Kevin liked the idea, but he was sure Kimberly would leave him without money because she loved the luxurious life and wanted to marry him while he was rich. The grandfather didn't put the plan off and immediately shouted to the whole office that Kevin was fired. As the guy was leaving the office, he left the door open, and the grandfather shouted again to the whole office that Kevin was fired and disinherited. As he walked past the staff, the guy made a mournful face and staggered sullenly to the elevator. When Kimberly learned that his grandfather had disowned him and now Kevin was left without money or inheritance, she turned her back on him and said she didn't want to date him. Kevin spent the evening of that unusual day with Nicole and Beatrice. They went to the movies, and then they all went to his house together. Kevin kept smiling as he looked at Nicole and she asked what was wrong. Kevin looked at her with a long look and told her that he was getting married soon. The girl looked away disappointed and quietly asked who the bride was. Kevin gave Beatrice some cash and whispered to her to run out and buy some ice cream. He took the young woman's hand, looked in her eyes, and told her that she was the bride. Kevin saw tears running down his beloved's cheeks and he gently wiped them away. Just then, Beatrice came back, holding 3 ice creams in her hands. The girl innocently asked why they were hugging, and everyone laughed happily. Nicole and Beatrice moved in with Kevin in his spacious apartment. The girl was delighted with his apartment. One day while cleaning the desk, she noticed a transparent box with a ring in it. The girl smiled and closed the desk. When Kevin came home, he understood that Nicole had found the ring and joked that he should have locked the desk. Then he added that he loved her and wanted to get married next month. Nicole agreed and preparations began. So many people came to Kevin and Nicole's wedding that Kevin was worried that the restaurant might not be big enough for everyone. Luckily, there was enough space, and dancing with his young wife, surrounded by his parents' friends and relatives, he soon forgot all his worries. After the dance, everyone took their seats and asked the newlywed to make a speech. Raising his glass, Kevin first thanked his dear grandfather for helping him to make the right decision. The grandfather gave Kevin a sly wink and Kevin continued. He thanked his parents for their love and contributions to his upbringing and education. Then he looked at his wife and said that he was very happy that he had met such a pure and bright girl like Nicole, who was willing to be with him no matter what. Kevin sat down and kissed Nicole, and everyone applauded. Now Kevin was perfectly happy. Dear friends, if you enjoy this story, please like it and subscribe to our channel. Have a great day and see you soon.